I found myself sitting with a group of, community leaders, pastors, priest, an imam, and other people in the community, helping the community surge forward. Over and over again, I heard this phrase. Now, people said it in different ways. People said it in their own language, but what they were saying was that it was the starting point of them realizing that they were chosen. That's what they said. They realized God's worth that was placed upon them, that God created them, that they were significant because of who God is and what God had wired them to be. Over and over again, there was these threads that all tied back to our very, very first part of this series, Chosen, where we focused in on that God chose us. That God breathed the stars into space, that God separated dark from light, and he called light good, not darkness, but light good. And that we have dignity and worth. Why? Because of who created us. You see, little villages in Tanzania and around the world are changing. Why? Well, it starts there because they're realizing, they're being taught that God created them, God chose them, that their worth, their significance is tethered to the Almighty God. I listened to a lady named Jennifer. You see, one of the other themes that we heard over and over again was fear. What caused them not to move forward? What caused them to live in a state of poverty? What caused them not to learn and to grow and to be entrepreneurs, to care for their family, to provide? And the word is a word that we're all familiar with. Now, it looks different here in Tanzania, but it's the same driving emotion. You know what kept them stuck? You know what's keeping them in place? You know what's stopping them from moving forward to care for themselves and their friends and their family? Again, same thing for us. The word is fear. I listened to Jennifer talk about the fear that kept her in place, and I asked her a simple question. What moved her out of fear? What was the genesis of getting her to take steps forward? And you know what she said? Well, she started quoting scriptures. When she started hearing verses talking about faith, like in Hebrews chapter 11, talking about faith, even if you don't see, knowing. Even if you don't grasp, knowing that there's a God. And it all goes back to this: who created, who chose. Now Jennifer is teaching other people in her village how to start a business. It centers around eggs and chickens and egg fertilization. But now she's teaching others. We listened to a young mother named Esther. And Esther, same fear that caused her to be stuck. Faith. And some people with world vision that started to teach them. And it all goes back to God chose them. Now Esther has chickens. She's breeding chickens. That's providing food for her family. She's selling the eggs, selling the chickens. And she's taught 15 other people within her village on how to do this. It's a game changer. It's a game changer economically. It's a game changer for health, But more than all of that, what I saw within Esther's eyes, in Jennifer's eyes, self-worth. Them realizing that they were worth everything. Because God, well, his worth has been placed upon them. And now that is creating ripple effects across the entire community. We met a lady named Rose. Rose has 5 kids, and her husband just left one day. She was the most of the vulnerable people in the village we were at. Her house was no bigger than, 5 foot by 6 foot, maybe. She had another small structure right next to it where she cooked. Let it sink in. 5 kids. Husband took off. Had nothing. She walks 0.856 miles. There and back 3 times a day to get water for her kids. I carried a 5-gallon bucket back. What's half of 0.856? You do the math. 0.425-ish. I carried the 5-gallon bucket full of water back, and my hands were on fire, my shoulders were on fire. I know I'm not like some strapping, muscular person, but it was humbling. You see, the vast majority of the people in the world have to walk at least 6 kilometers for water. Now, for Rose, it was a shorter distance, but the average is 6K to get water. And in this small little community in Niololo, with the partnership of World Vision and the local government, they're putting in not just water lines with a water storehouse that's going to store some 150,000 gallons of water that is going to run these small water lines to the houses that they can. Attached to is going to be a water treatment facility. I say that loosely, but it's going to treat the water, make it clean water. So people like Rose don't have to walk and put their lives in danger. Remember, we can't change the world. We can't. That's a saying that I've said before. Let's change the world. And the reality is we can't change the world. Nor does God want us to change the world. What God wants is an army of people who realize the power of impacting one life, one family, one child, one community. We can do that. And if we all do that together, then just maybe, the world starts to change. What I know, we showed up at a school. This school had 250 some to 300 kids, somewhere in that range. There's another school just down the road. They had more 400 to 500, so they're starting to fill this school. And we showed up at the school, and the kids' smiles were just electric, and their energy, you could feel it. They were so excited. As soon as I turned my camera around so that they could see their faces, the energy level just skyrocketed. I made my way around one of the buildings and off to the distance. I saw the tent, the chosen tent. The orange just grabbed my attention, and I could see in the shadows of the tent the pictures hanging on strings. I slowly but quickly walked towards it. All the emotion that you can imagine just welled up within me. Right now, the emotion is welling up within me as I saw pictures hanging there. Between our churches and another church located in Peoria, Illinois, and Dave Jane is doing a great job leading that church. Between our two churches and a team of people that have been traveling with us who individually have asked friends and family to sponsor a kid to be chosen. Almost 500 kids have been sponsored just in our small little team. They had been going since 9 that morning, one by one. A child would walk up and pick a picture. One by one, a child would sit there, and I watched it, glance at all of the faces and families and individuals. Would walk up and down the line, just scanning. The older kids understood what was going on. The younger kids, I'm not sure how much they grasped, but they knew that they got to pick. So no matter the age, that was the thing that they all understood. The dignity of they getting to pick a family, a person, a couple, for them to hold on to that picture. Once they had locked in on the one, and who knows why, they would reach up and they'd grab that picture. Some would smile, some wouldn't. Some would just stare at the picture, and some would turn around, and I think it was just such an overwhelming experience. Our group sat there for about an hour and a half watching 20, 30, I don't know how many of them choose. Tears just welled in my eyes. Because I realized what was going to change for that child, what was going to change for that family, what was going to change for that community. It will never be the same again. For me and my wife and my 2 daughters, we snapped a picture and we wanted to be chosen. I remember sitting there and several kids had gone, and I wish I could have recorded every single one that day. They were still going until late in the evening. But I remember sitting there, and one little girl, a little 5-year-old, stood up. It was her turn. Now, when I first saw her about an hour before that. They helped us understand the entire process. And so we had walked to another tent and where kids were sitting there waiting to go through their process. And so they actually used Priska to be an example. They had her come up to a little desk, and they had given her a name badge where her name was on it, Priska Singsta. They shared about how kids have been kind of in queue, waiting for a moment like this. As they were sharing through the process, we moved to the next step. The next step is they just wanted to clean the kids up a little bit. So some needed cleaned up more than the others, but they knew that they were going to get their picture taken, and they wanted to, again, just affirm the dignity that they were God's special possession, that they were chosen. So they shared about that stage, and they moved us to the main tent where we all gathered around and sat with our cameras and phones out. All the kids from school had gathered around. It was a sea of kids behind me. And also one by one, kids started to go. And then Priska stood up. I remember Priska because, she was the example that Joseph had used to show us every step along the way to get to this point. And she stood up, this cute little girl that was, again, had to be such an overwhelming moment. She methodically took steps towards a sea of pictures on the wall, and I had my camera out like I did for every child that day that I could capture. She stood there and she looked left to right, up and down. And all of a sudden she reached out. She chose. I mean, personally, I'm still trying to process these feelings, these emotions. She chose us. Again, I don't know how much she was processing in that moment, but when she turned around and was holding our pictures, again, not called to change the world, but can change a life, can change a family, can impact a community. I walked up to her. There's a translator there helping her to understand who I was in the picture. And I reached out my big hand, and she reached out her little hand, and we just fist bumped. I don't know what the future is, nor do you. But I do know in that moment what happened within me. You see, that's what being part of God's royal priesthood is all about. Royalty, that we are sons and daughters of King Jesus, the risen King, that we have all the authority and power coming from Jesus as King, and we are priests. That we have access to God Most High, and that we are called to love like Jesus loved. I mean, that to really love, to extend compassion like God extended compassion through Jesus on the cross towards us. For us to show mercy like God through Jesus on the cross showed mercy to us. That we are to love people by serving people to Jesus. Why? Because that is the image of the cross. That is the image of the cross. I want to say thank you, church, for being the church. Thank you for stepping up. Thank you for choosing to be chosen. What I know is the kids, the families in Neololo, we just made a significant impact in this one small little part of the world. And what I know, because I've seen it, is Jesus' light is illuminating Neololo, Tanzania. A lot of work is yet to be done. There's some 20-year plan that they have. And they're year 2 of 20 years. But what I know, and what you need to know, is we've made a difference. We've made a difference here, Tanzania. But I also know that God is changing us from the inside out. That we are a chosen family. God's royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, so that we may declare, that we may worship Him who called us out of darkness into His wonderful light. Thank you, church.